Maya Chen arranged her presentation boards with mathematical precision. Each graph, each photograph of coral specimens, each notation stood at perfect right angles to the edge of the table. She smoothed her tailored blazer and checked her watch exactly 45 minutes before the ocean conservation benefit would officially begin. "Everything is perfect," she whispered to herself. A ritual that calmed her methodical mind. The Maritime Museum's grand hall stretched around her. Other scientists and researchers setting up their own stations with considerably less attention to detail. At 34, Maya had built her reputation as one of the most meticulous marine biologists in her field. Her research on coral reef regeneration had earned her grants and respect, but little in the way of close relationships. She preferred it that way, predictable, controlled. Like the carefully monitored tanks in her laboratory, she glanced down at her hands as she adjusted. A photograph of a particularly vibrant reef formation, 10 fingers moving with practiced efficiency, the same hands that could delicately handle the most fragile sea creatures. Maya took pride in their steadiness. The first guests wouldn't arrive for another half hour. But Maya heard the heavy museum doors swing open with unexpected force. A gust of cool evening air rushed in, carrying laughter that seemed too vivid for the austere setting. "You can't possibly expect me to wait outside when there's an entire ocean world to capture in here." The voice was warm, melodic, with an accent Maya couldn't quite place. She looked up to see a man with a camera slung around his neck, talking animatedly to an exasperated security guard. His untamed dark curls framed a face that seemed perpetually ready to break into a smile. Unlike Maya's precisely pressed outfit, his linen shirt was rumpled. Sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms, marked with colorful tattoos of various sea creatures. "The event doesn't begin until the guard began." I know, the man interrupted. "But the light right now is perfect for photographing those whale skeletons. It won't take 10 minutes, I promise." Despite herself, Maya was intrigued. The guard looked unconvinced but finally shrugged and walked away. The photographer moved through the space with fluid motion. Completely opposite to Maya's careful, measured steps, he danced around exhibits, kneeling one moment, stretching tall the next, his hands working the camera with intuitive grace. When he reached Maya's station, he stopped abruptly. "Now this," he said, lowering his camera, "is fascinating work." Maya straightened. "The event hasn't started yet." "I know," he extended his hand. "Elias Rivera. I'm documenting the benefit for National Geographic." Maya hesitated before taking his hand. "Dr. Maya Chen, the coral regeneration researcher. Your work in Palau was revolutionary." His eyes, a warm amber color, lit with genuine interest. Maya felt a strange flutter in her chest. "You're familiar with my research? I've photographed coral reefs worldwide for 15 years. Your methods have given me hope that the colors I've watched fade might return." Elias moved to examine her photographs. "These are remarkable specimens." "Thank you," Maya replied, noticing how his fingers, the same number as any humans. She absently noted, traced the air above her images with reverence. "But these photos don't capture their true essence," he added. Maya felt a flicker of irritation. "These are scientifically accurate representations." Elias laughed. "Science needs art sometimes, Dr. Chen. The world needs to fall in love with these reefs to want to save them." Before Maya could respond, Elias lifted his camera. "May I?" Something in his expression, earnest, yet playful, made Maya nod despite her reservations. She watched as he photographed her work from angles she'd never considered, his body moving with the fluidity of someone accustomed to following instinct rather than plans. When the first official guests began to arrive, Elias lowered his camera and leaned close to Maya. "I'll show you the photos later. I think we could create something remarkable together," as he moved away to photograph other exhibits. Maya realized her carefully ordered display had been subtly disturbed by his presence. More unsettling was the realization that she didn't mind. For the first time in years, Maya Chen felt the still waters of her life ripple with possibility. 3 weeks after the ocean conservation benefit, Maya found herself in an unfamiliar position, sitting cross-legged on a weathered dock at sunset, shoes off, schedule abandoned. Beside her, Elias adjusted his camera settings, occasionally glancing at her with amusement. "You're still sitting like you're in a board meeting," he teased, reaching out to gently push her shoulder. "Relax, Maya. The ocean won't judge your posture." Maya consciously tried to loosen her rigid spine. "Some of us don't naturally slouch our way through life. It's not slouching, it's adapting to the environment." Elias stretched his legs out, feet dangling over the edge of the dock, like water taking the shape of its container. Since their first meeting, Elias had been persistent in his efforts to collaborate, claiming her research and his photography could create a compelling conservation narrative. Maya had initially resisted, but his enthusiasm was infectious, and she found herself increasingly drawn to his spontaneous approach to life. "I've been thinking about your phosphorescent algae research," Elias said, snapping a photo of the setting sun. "What if we did a night shoot? Capture the bioluminescence in action." Maya tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Those conditions are difficult to predict and control. Exactly what makes it magical." He turned to face her fully, eyes alight with excitement. "Not everything beautiful can be scheduled, Dr. Chen." Maya felt that now familiar flutter when he looked at her that way. "You know, some of us need structure to function effectively, and some of us need to break structure to create." Elias moved closer, their shoulders nearly touching. "I think that's why we're good together. Complementary forces." The casual way he said together made Maya's cheeks warm. Their collaboration had gradually extended beyond professional meetings in her laboratory to impromptu excursions like this one. Each time, Elias pulled her slightly further from her comfort zone. "Tell me something you've never planned to do," he said suddenly. Maya considered the question. "I don't typically do things without planning," Elias laughed, the sound mixing with the rhythmic waves below them. "That's the whole point of the question." "Fine." Maya looked out at the horizon. "I've never gone swimming at night." Before she could react, Elias was on his feet, pulling his shirt over his head. "Perfect. Let's change that right now." No? I didn't mean, but Elias was already down to his swimming shorts, his lean body silhouetted against the darkening sky. "The water's warm." "I checked earlier. I don't have a swimsuit," Maya protested, though she found her eyes tracing the contours of his shoulders, the way his hands rested confidently on his hips. "Underwear works fine." He extended his hand to her. "Live a little, Maya." Something in his invitation challenged a part of her that had been dormant for too long, with a deliberation that surprised even herself. Maya stood and slipped off her blazer. "Turn around," she instructed. Elias obliged with an exaggerated bow, and Maya quickly removed her outer clothing, leaving only her practical black underwear. The evening air kissed her skin, raising goosebumps along her arms and legs. "Ready?" she said softly. When Elias turned, his expression shifted from playful to something more intense. "You're beautiful," he said simply, before embarrassment could overtake her. Maya took 3 quick steps and dove into the water, feeling a rush of exhilaration as she broke the surface. Seconds later, Elias splashed in beside her, underwater. She opened her eyes to see him swimming toward her, bubbles trailing from his body, hands reaching out. When they surfaced, they were close enough that she could see droplets clinging to his eyelashes. "See?" he said, treading water effortlessly. "Some of the best moments can't be planned." Maya surprised herself by laughing, running her hands through her wet hair. "I suppose you might be right." "Just this once." Elias swam closer, his hand finding hers beneath the water. "There's a whole world of unplanned moments waiting for you, Maya Chen, if you're brave enough to embrace them." As the first stars appeared above them, Maya felt something shift within her, a careful scientist beginning to hypothesize that some variables in life were meant to remain wonderfully, terrifyingly unpredictable. The research vessel pitched gently as Maya reviewed her equipment checklist for the 3rd time. The expedition to document coral restoration sites off Costa Rica's coast had been planned for months, but Elias's last-minute addition to the crew had been decidedly unplanned. Does the famous Dr. Chen always triple-check her gear? Or is that special treatment for when I'm watching? Elias leaned against the cabin doorway, camera in hand. Maya didn't look up. "Triple-checking prevents disasters. You should try it sometime." "I prefer my disasters." They make better stories. He moved beside her, the small cabin suddenly feeling much smaller. Besides, I packed light. Camera, extra lenses, swim shorts, no wetsuit. Borrowed one from the crew, he grinned. Spontaneity with reasonable precautions. I'm evolving under your influence. Maya found herself smiling despite her nervousness. Having Elias aboard complicated things. For 6 weeks, their professional collaboration had slowly transformed into something neither of them had named yet. Lingering touches, conversations that stretched into early morning hours. The magnetic pull she felt whenever he was near. All of it was new territory without clear protocols. We'll reach the first site in an hour, she said, closing her equipment case. The team will set up the underwater monitoring stations. You'll have about 3 hours of optimal light for photography. Elias stepped closer, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Always the perfect planner. When they suited up and slipped beneath the waves an hour later, Maya felt the familiar calm of being underwater, a world where her methodical nature served her well. She led Elias to the restoration frames where new coral polyps were taking hold. Pointing out the progress since her last expedition, through his mask, Elias's eyes showed the wonder she'd come to cherish in him. He photographed everything with reverent attention, not just the coral, but Maya as she worked, her hands moving with practiced precision as she took measurements and samples. After surfacing for air tanks, they descended to a deeper section where a natural reef still thrived. Here, in this underwater sanctuary, they were alone, separated from the research team, cataloging samples on the other side of the reef formation. Elias motioned toward a cave-like opening in the reef. Maya hesitated, then nodded, following him into the blue-shadowed space. Inside, light filtered through cracks in the coral ceiling, creating dancing patterns around them. Elias turned to her, bubbles escaping from his regulator as he slowly removed his mask. Maya's scientific mind immediately calculated the risk. Shallow enough depth, short enough exposure before she followed suit. Their faces now free in this underwater pocket of air. I wanted to see your eyes without the mask, Elias said, his voice echoing strangely in the small space. They're the color of the sea at dawn. Maya felt herself blush, grateful for the blue light that hit it. We shouldn't stay long. Just long enough. He moved closer, one hand finding her waist. Maya, I photographed wonders all over the world, but nothing compares to watching you in your element. The confession hung between them in the humid air. Maya felt her carefully constructed boundaries dissolving like salt in water. I'm not good at this, she admitted. Feelings don't follow predictable patterns like coral, growth, or tidal movements. That's what makes them worth studying. His fingers traced her cheekbone with the same care she showed her most delicate specimens. Some things need to be experienced, not just observed. When his lips found hers, Maya stopped analyzing and simply felt the warmth of his mouth, the way his hands cradled her face as if she were precious and rare. The surprising rightness of this unplanned moment. They separated only when their oxygen monitors beeped a reminder, reluctantly replacing their masks. As they swam back to the main reef, Maya realized that for the first time in her structured life, she was experiencing something transformative that couldn't be measured or quantified. That night, in the narrow bunk of her cabin, Elias held her close as the ship rocked gently. His fingers traced patterns on her bare skin while she mapped the constellations of freckles across his shoulders. What are you thinking, Dr. Chen? He murmured against her hair. Maya smiled in the darkness. That some experiments yield unexpected results. Are these results acceptable? His hand found hers, intertwining their fingers. They require further study, she whispered, pulling him closer. Extensive, thorough study. His laugh vibrated against her chest as the ocean carried them forward into uncharted waters. The Costa Rican expedition had ended 2 months ago, but its effects continued to ripple through Maya's life. Her apartment, once a testament to minimalist order, now housed evidence of Elias's frequent presence, camera charger permanently plugged beside her desk, colorful throws disrupting her neutral palette, candid photographs appearing on previously bare walls. Most unsettling was how easily she had adapted to these changes. The Maya Chen of 6 months ago would have found such disorder intolerable. The Maya who woke with Ilias's arm draped across her waist found it increasingly necessary. But this morning, as rain streaked her kitchen windows, tension hung in the air between them. It's 3 months in the Galapagos. Maya, the assignment of a lifetime. Elias paced the kitchen, coffee forgotten on the counter. National Geographic doesn't make these offers every day. Maya kept her voice measured despite the tightness in her chest. I understand the opportunity. The timing is just impossible with my research schedule. You could request a sabbatical. Your assistant can monitor the lab work. His eyes pleaded with her. Think about it too. Could document the environmental changes while I photograph them. We'd be the perfect team. I have responsibilities, Elias. Grant deadlines, students depending on me, experiments at critical stages. She gripped her mug tighter. My career isn't something I can put on hold for an impromptu adventure. Elias stopped pacing, his expression shifting. Is that what this is to you? Our relationship just an impromptu adventure? That's not what I meant, isn't it? He ran a hand through his unruly hair. Sometimes I wonder if you see us as just another experiment with a predetermined end date. The accusation stung precisely because Maya had asked herself the same question in quiet moments. What was the logical conclusion to a relationship between someone who planned 5 years ahead and someone who didn't know where he'd be next month? That's unfair, she said quietly. I've changed so much for you already. Changed. Elias laughed without humor. Maya, letting me leave a toothbrush here, or occasionally skipping breakfast meetings to stay in bed, isn't transformation. It's basic compromise. And dropping everything I've worked for isn't compromise, it's sacrifice. The words came out sharper than intended. Elias stepped back as if physically struck. I would never ask you to sacrifice your work. I'm asking you to integrate our lives in a meaningful way. Maya felt the conversation sliding beyond her control. By following you around the world on a moment's notice? That's your definition of integration? At least I'm trying to find solutions. His voice rose in frustration. You approach our relationship like one of your experiments' controlled variables. Minimal disruption to your primary work. And you treat it like one of your photographs, capturing the beautiful moments while ignoring the mundane reality of building something lasting. The silence that followed felt heavier than any words. Elias turned to the window, his shoulders tense. I need some air. Maya watched him gather his jacket, unable to find words to bridge the sudden chasm between them. At the door, he paused. You know what the difference is between us, Maya? I see limitations as challenges to overcome. You see them as parameters to accept. After he left, Maya moved through her morning routine with mechanical precision, trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest. She entered her laboratory an hour later, greeted her research team, and immersed herself in the familiar comfort of measurable outcomes and predictable reactions. But as she examined coral samples under the microscope, a realization crystallized with devastating clarity. She had become an observer in her own relationship, analyzing rather than experiencing, documenting rather than living. That evening, she sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by the small disruptions Elias had brought to her ordered life of vibrant throw pillow. A half-empty bottle of his preferred tea, photographs of them laughing in the ocean. Each item represented a moment when she had chosen to step beyond her boundaries. Maya picked up a frame containing a photograph Elias had taken of her during their first underwater expedition. In it, she was examining a coral formation, unaware of the camera. What struck her now was the expression he had captured, not the careful scientist, but a woman fully alive in her passion, eyes bright with discovery. Was that how he saw her? Not as the controlled Dr. Chen, but as someone capable of the same wonder and spontaneity he embodied. As rain continued to drum against her windows, Maya realized she stood at a crossroads. She could return to her carefully structured life, predictable, safe, and increasingly hollow, or she could take a leap into the unknown currents that Elias navigated so naturally, for the first time in her methodical life. The logical choice and the right choice seemed irreconcilably different. The Galapagos Islands stretched beneath the small plain, volcanic landscapes meeting turquoise waters in a vista that seemed almost otherworldly. Maya pressed her forehead against the window. watching clouds cast moving shadows across the terrain below. 3 weeks had passed since their argument. 3 weeks of silence that had felt like an eternity. 3 weeks of questioning every certainty she had built her life around. The plane began its descent, and Maya gripped the armrests, nervousness fluttering in her stomach. She had acted against every instinct for caution and planning requesting emergency leave from her department, arranging for her assistant to oversee the lab, packing a single suitcase with no clear return date in mind. Now, as the island grew closer, doubt crept in. What if Elias had moved on? What if she had misunderstood what he truly wanted from her? When she stepped onto the tarmac, the humid air enveloped her like a warm blanket. She followed signs to the small terminal building, scanning faces in the waiting area without success. Of course he wouldn't be here, he had no idea she was coming. Maya hailed a taxi, showing the driver the address of the research station where Elias had mentioned he would be based. As they drove along coastal roads, she rehearsed what she might say, each scenario feeling inadequate. The research station was a cluster of simple buildings overlooking a protected bay. Maya paid the driver and stood for a moment, absorbing the sounds of unfamiliar birds and the rhythmic crash of waves against volcanic rock. A researcher directed her to a trail leading to tide pools, where the National Geographic team had been photographing earlier. Heart-pounding, Maya followed the path, feeling strangely like she was approaching the most important experiment of her life. She found him kneeling at the edge of a tide pool, camera poised to capture a marine iguana gliding through shallow water. The sight of him so completely in his element made her chest tighten with emotion. Maya stood silently, unwilling to disrupt the moment. After he took several shots, Elias lowered his camera and noticed her reflection in the water. He turned slowly, disbelief washing over his features. Maya, she took a tentative step forward. I've never been to the Galapagos before. Elias stood, leaving his equipment on the rocks. What are you doing here? Testing a hypothesis. She moved closer, drawn by the magnetic pull she had felt since their first meeting. I've been collecting data on Essenmand. I've reached some conclusions. A smile tugged at his lips. Always the scientist. The data suggest I've been approaching our relationship with flawed methodology. Maya took a deep breath. I've been treating variables as constants and refusing to adjust parameters when evidence contradicted my assumptions. Ilias's expression softened. And what assumptions were those? That structure and spontaneity are mutually exclusive. That passion and precision can't coexist. She reached for his hand. That I had to choose between the life I built and the life you showed me was possible? His fingers intertwined with hers. In your conclusion? That the most remarkable discoveries happen at the intersection of different worlds. Maya moved closer until only inches separated them. I don't want to observe life anymore, Elias. I want to experience it. With you, his free hand traced the curve of her cheek. What about your research? Your carefully structured 5-year plan? Plans can be revised. Research can be collaborative. She smiled. I'm proposing a new methodology, one that accommodates spontaneity without sacrificing purpose. That sounds suspiciously like a compromise, he teased, though his eyes remained serious. It's an evolution, Maya corrected. You taught me that some variables aren't meant to be controlled. They're meant to be embraced. Elias pulled her closer. And what about the Galapagos? How long are you staying? I bought a one-way ticket. The admission still felt terrifying and exhilarating. My return date is ... undetermined. The joy that spread across his face was worth every moment of anxiety. Dr. Maya Chen, embracing uncertainty. I never thought I'd see the day. I had an excellent teacher. She reached up to touch the laugh lines around his eyes. Though I did bring my research equipment, some habits die hard. Elias laughed, the sound blending with the crashing waves. I wouldn't want you any other way. When he kissed her, Maya felt the final pieces of a complex equation falling into place. This was the perfect convergence. It's the moment where her carefully measured world and his boundless one created something entirely new. That evening, they sat on the shore watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that defied categorization. Elise's arm wrapped around her shoulders as Maya leaned against him. You know, he said softly, I've been thinking about your coral restoration methods. Maya looked up in surprise. You have? What if we combined your scientific approach with compelling visual storytelling? Create a global awareness campaign showing not just the problem, but the solution. His eyes sparkled with excitement. We could document regeneration sites worldwide. Maya felt a familiar thrill the one she got when a promising research avenue opened before her. A longitudinal visual study of coral reef restoration, ... Elias squeezed her shoulder. Your precision, my perspective, think of what we could create together. The stars appeared above them. Maya realized they had found something rare and precious, a balance point where their differences strengthened rather than divided them. Her structured approach provided a foundation for his creativity, while his spontaneity brought vibrancy to her ordered world. I love you, she said simply, the words flowing naturally, despite never having been planned. Elias's smile rivaled the brightest stars overhead. I love you too, Maya Chun, methodical mind, adventurous heart. And all the ocean stretched before them, vast and unknown. Much like the future they would navigate together, sometimes with careful maps, sometimes with nothing but instinct, but always with the understanding that the most beautiful discoveries happened when different worlds collided.